times when I was growing up, I was told, "ये तुम्हारा काम नहीं है. It's a boy thing. Women and technology don't go together." Well, today I have someone who has broken the glass ceiling and is a woman in technology. I welcome on my show Madhvi.
Hi, thank you so much.
So, Madhvi, while growing up, we have all these prejudices. As I said, ये तुमसे नहीं हो पाएगा, ये लड़कों का काम है. So I'm sure you must have during your childhood heard the same things or not. Tell me.
Yes and no. I think, with me, my parents are both doctors, and my sister and I were always kind of brought up with this kind of, notion that we can achieve anything we want to, and anything we dream of as well. So I think we were always brought up with that kind of mindset. But of course, in this journey, you always end up kind of crossing paths with, apart from your parents, relatives, etc., where roles are very gender defined. And I think even today, that's something you come across. But I think because we've been used to, and we're kind of brought up with that mindset of, you can do anything regardless of your gender. I think, for me personally, it was something that I really never kind of second guessed it.
So I think that's a very good point. And this is what our viewers will understand, that it's all about the conditioning and the upbringing you give to your child. We're often given notions like, blue is for boys, pink is for girls. If you're a boy, you're supposed to be into cars and, making stuff. And if you're a girl, you're supposed to play home and with dolls. So I think that's very interesting. So how did that interest begin? What was that spark that led you to this field?
So I think, for me, I was always, as a child as well, pretty outgoing. I played with my brothers more than my sisters. And I think, apart from that, even in school and university, textbook education was probably not my strongest suit. So what I realized is, in this process of, being in university, what I realized is also the other skill set that I had besides just going to college to study and get grades and things like that. So when I went to Australia to further my education, what I kind of the experience I had as an international student, as a woman who's traveling on her own, kind of really away from the cocooned, life that we have as women here living with our parents, it kind of really gave me a sense of independence. It gave me a chance to figure things out on my own without having to fall back and depend on, on let's say parents or people, because here you've kind of got to develop that aspect of independent thinking. So I think that really allowed me to kind of explore, make mistakes, learn from them, and really kind of stumble into experiences and opportunities. Now, one such opportunity was for me to kind of, start working as an intern for an early stage startup when I was in Australia. So something that, international students usually do is they end up kind of getting jobs just to make sure they cover the rent and, take care of their living expenses, because living overseas can be expensive. So, for me, one thing that I was very clear about is, if I'm going to spend 20 hours a week doing something, I might as well have that to be on my resume. So I tried to find a job that really kind of matched my skill set in terms of what I've learned and in terms of what I would like to aspire to be. So I think, and this was around 2012, so startup was really it was not a buzzword like it is today. So I think that's where my first, encounter, or rather experience with startups really began.
So when you started, tell us something about your education and what your foundation was like and how you actually began, and where did that love for the subject really take its being?
So, I'm brought up in a traditional South Indian family. I'm from Bangalore. I did my schooling in Bangalore. I pursued my engineering here as well. And then I moved overseas to further my education. I did my master's in Australia. And while I was studying in Australia, I started looking for jobs. And that's when, I came across this internship on one of the websites. So I applied and interviewed for it, and they hired me, and I started as an intern. I did front desk receptionist. I did door-to-door sales. I did QA testing. So I pretty much wore all the hats that you could probably think of in a company. And I was probably the third or the fourth employee they hired. So, and I loved it. I loved experiencing all of these different roles, because typically you wouldn't get that opportunity to. So I kind of understood what I like to do, what probably I was not good at and I should learn, and things like that. So yeah, I mean, that's where my love for startups really began.
And a startup sort of gives you that opportunity to multitask, because they're cutting down on costs. They have lesser people doing more things. So it gives you, as you said, a free hand to try different things, see what you like or don't. So then what happened next after that?
Sure. So, what we discovered as a company too in the previous company is we were really kind of figuring out what is our market, who are our customers, how do we sell, how do we make money, how do we sustain. So typical, starting up challenges. And we were able to go from a 5-people team to a 100-people team in about 4.5 years. We were we grew to the Asia Pacific region, and I managed the product. So I was product manager of the Asia Pacific region. And that kind of growth and exposure only comes with working in a startup, because you grow with the company. Yeah. And so I mean, that's where I think it all began. And I worked there for about 4.5 years, and around that time is where I knew that I really wanted to do something on my own, because when you started delegating, and when you have more people, you kind of delegate, and there are more people to do what you used to do. And I missed that hustle. And, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to do this on my own. And around that time, this was 2016, I got introduced to a successful woman entrepreneur in the Bay Area, and I was making a trip to California anyway. So I wrote to her, I got an appointment with her. She is of Indian origin. And I said, hey, I've heard all these things about you. I've read all of this about you. I'd love to meet you and really understand, what you think about me starting a company. Like, I know I want to start one. I don't know what problem I'm going to solve. I don't know, what it's going to do. But all I know is I want to be able to start a technology company. And she said, okay, let's meet. And I think we met in Palo Alto, and that meeting ended up being a couple of more meetings back to back. So that whole week I was in San Francisco, pretty much we ended up building our business plan, and we ended up, having a draft, go-to-market strategy and things like that. And she said, hey, I'm going to start this with you. Will you be interested? And I was like, oh my God, yes.
What else could you have asked?
I know, right? So I quickly moved back. I went back to Sydney, quit my job, and I soon after kind of, returned to India to really figure out what I'm going to do. Moved back with my parents, and kind of started from scratch, you can say. But it's been a beautiful journey.
So how was the vibe back home? I mean, you're leaving a job to start your own company in technology.
Yeah.
So how did your parents react to it, and what was the general vibe around that decision?
So I think, most Indians' parents, feel like when their kids are overseas and they're working overseas, that's the biggest accomplishment. So here it was the opposite. I had all that good job and great life and all of that, and kind of coming back to really start from scratch. So they were supportive, but they didn't quite understand the decision. But they were, they're still very supportive. But I feel like, this was something that I had to do for myself, and I really had to see it through. So I really didn't even tell them that I'm coming back for good or I'm moving for good. I just, said, hey guys, I'm coming back. And they're like, oh my God, you're back for good. So, so it took them a little bit of time to process that, but they've been very supportive since.
They must have been like, okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
So now you worked in Australia, and then you've been to, a couple of countries abroad, and then coming back to India. So how was the mindset of those around you? So there, I think, the culture is more adaptive to women in various domains, but in India, it's a different ballgame altogether. So did you feel that difference in the countries in terms of how you were perceived when you'd approach a client, or was it the same?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there was definitely, some people were very perplexed as to why would, I take a decision. Some people thought it was rash and it was drastic and not well thought through. But I think initially it was a bit of a challenge. I feel like it was a little bit of a, most of my adult life, I had spent overseas, and, I became the person who I am, and, kind of matured that way when I was overseas.
And accustomed to that culture and that work life and that mindset, and to come back. So.
Mm-hmm. And so it was a bit of like a an adjustment and a learning curve. But I feel like, at the end of the day, when we stand our grounds and when we know who we are, and really, sure, it affects you a little bit, but the prize is in being focused and kind of cutting through the noise. And and that's an acquired skill. So you've got to build that. You've got to build that thick skin, and you've got to build that ability to kind of bulldoze your way, I guess, through the noise. And I think so far so good. So I've been able to kind of I think it's better now, but initially, yes, because I had no idea what I was doing. I just packed my bags and came. I really didn't have a plan per se. So at that time, of course, there's anxiety and there's insecurity mixed with all these questions that people are asking you. But I think you learn from that. You don't let that affect you, and you really stand your grounds. And I think that's what I did, and I'm still doing every day.
So what teething problems did you face while you were doing your own startup and launching? And were those gender-related issues, or was it just general, teething issues of having a startup?
I mean, mostly issues around startups, but gender issues, sure. I mean, they are, I think gender issues really kind of come through when you pay attention to it. Or if you don't, like I said, if somebody says something biased, or if somebody says something that is very role specific, I kind of, I upfront, I kind of address that upfront. I don't feel like brushing it off, or I don't think, of, acting like we didn't hear it. I think it's important to educate people about, what they're thinking, and it could be wrong, right?
And so talk about the elephant in the room and address it and move past.
Absolutely. And I look at it as, educating people. Look, people of our generation, come with this mindset, but people of previous generations are accustomed to a certain way. And I believe it's all about learning and unlearning, and that is a very important part of everybody's life. So you've got to learn and unlearn, and these things come with being upfront and being open. So if somebody is, again, I can do that today, but initially when I was starting, I had to kind of develop that within myself as to how to address it, and can I do this? And for example, sales, it didn't come to me naturally. I'm a product person. I come from a product background, so I really had to learn to sell. And when I'm selling to universities here in India, you got to be dressed in a particular way. You've got to be presentable in a particular way. You can't. So things like that, I had to kind of pick up on the go. But you do what's best for the job, and that's the way I look at it.
So when you were hiring for your company, did you make a sort of a conscious decision that, I'm a woman, I need to hire more women employees, or that I'm a woman and I need to hire male employees to balance it out? Or did you just hire on the basis of, talent and ability?
So I try to hire for whatever role first, women. I always prefer women. But, if there is somebody, again, the second option is the role, right? At the end of the day, we're running a business, but if whatever role there is, I always give women more opportunities, and I try to interview more women than I do men. And that's my interviewing process personally, because I feel it's important to provide opportunities to women. We say equal opportunities, and we have to kind of participate in that process. So it's a very conscious decision that whenever we recruit for any role, we interview 3 women to at least, to 1 man.
I think that's amazing. So I want you to educate our viewers here, parents who have daughters, or let me not make it, young girls who want to probably do that and make a niche in the field of technology. What kind of upbringing or what kind of ethics do you want them to instill in their girls so that they feel empowered and they don't feel overwhelmed by the whole idea of women in technology?
So, my personal belief is that women are born multitaskers. It's just in our DNA, right? And multitasking is a very kind of key role or a key skill, ability to have in a manager or any sort of executive role. So I believe naturally women are kind of already they come with that trait. Now, with the whole emotional and kind of the empathetic factor that we bring in, I think women make great managers, women make great leaders, and that is something that we really need to teach our generation, right? Like, for example, our working moms, I've said this in the past, that they cook, they make sure that their kids go to school, they teach their children, they even, if they're working, they go to their job, they have to be there on time. They do all of this and they multitask it beautifully, right? And we just don't give them enough credit. So I think we need to kind of scale, and we need to bring up the next generation by showing that they have this trait in their DNA. And I think that's going to go a long way.
How do you feel that in this particular sphere, there needs to be more sensitization, more inclusivity about having women on board? And do you feel there is still an inhibition about having them in the top rung of the ladder in a field like technology?
I think that there is. It will change, but there definitely is. I feel like there is a little more apprehension, in terms of, it could be anything, like just let's take statistics, right? In terms of how many women are on boards of the big Fortune 500 companies, how many women actually run startups, how many women founders run billion-dollar or unicorn startups, or in terms of acquire funding, how it's harder for women versus a man. So yes, there is definitely a gap there that has to be filled, but the good thing there is that there is awareness about this and people are talking about it. So I feel like that's the first step.
It's so surprising because there are women like Kamala Harris, and then there's the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and women are now at the helm of affairs in every sphere. We have a Kalpana Chawla, we have a Madhavi Shankar, breaking the glass ceiling through and through. So what message do you want to give to our viewers, Madhavi, parents, children, young girls? What would you like to say?
I would like to say that, women and young girls especially, that follow your heart, and it's not important. I mean, sure, we need to kind of fit in society. We need to kind of be able to coexist happily, but not at the price of your dreams and not at the price of your ambition. And, people who love you will come around and they will support you, but you need to kind of see that through and not give up your dreams and aspirations, to kind of just fit in and kind of be in the crowd. So I would say pursue it and just don't give up.
Absolutely, Madhavi. Why fit in when you can stand out? On that note, Madhavi, we would like to thank you from the bottom of our heart. It has been so empowering listening to that and to see what, the journey you've come through. And I think it's very rare we find someone who's gone abroad and come back and is doing what they're doing. So more power to you. It was a pleasure having you on board. Thank you, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you, Nancy. It was my pleasure being here. Thank you for this opportunity.